This is a synthesizer. What's up and welcome back to Gabe at Miller Music. This might just look like the end of a MIDI cable, but in reality, this right here is an entire synthesizer with multiple modes of synthesis and a bunch of control built in. You would plug this into some sort of MIDI controller, probably send some CC values to it to control its various parameters, and go from there. And then you actually pipe audio out of its little audio output. This is the Flash synthesizer, and this is built by a very small company. They do limited runs of these every now and again, and I was able to get my hands on one, which is pretty cool because I've got this fascination with tiny music production devices, and this is literally the smallest synthesizer I could find, period. So it's pretty expensive for how tiny it is, but I just really wanted to try it, see how well it works, and see how well it works with the Novation Circuit tracks. So, all that being said, let's get into it. So, this is the box that it comes in. I've already opened it and messed around with the synth a bit, but I did want to show you what you get. So, you get this adapter, and then the synth is literally like smaller than the adapter. So, this plugs into here. You do that first, and then you plug this whole rig into your computer and load up their software, and that's how you're going to do stuff like edit patches, edit which MIDI channels that this thing receives, which is super important because by default, it receives all of the MIDI channels, and I just want it to receive one. That way, when I control it with my circuit, I can have just this MIDI channel send this thing MIDI data. That's the goal. There's also a bit of documentation that comes with this thing, just a little notice about making sure you update your firmware, and a handy little guide with a list of the built-in patches, tunings, and CCs, which is super handy. So I've already gone into components on my Novation circuit to update the CCs that each of these knobs is sending. So I have plugged this in before, I've verified that it works, but this is going to be fairly first impressions-y. Maybe second impressions. So all I have to do is plug it in, and then this side sends audio out. Now, it's fairly quiet. That's the thing I've already noticed, and indeed the manual even says it's going to be fairly quiet and you might want to provide some amplification. I'm not going to bother with that yet, but that might be coming down the line. So I'm going to start off not running the audio of this back into the circuit because it says not to do that, and I don't know if I believe that, but I'll try it both ways. I'm just going to, first of all, plug the output of this directly into my audio interface so you can hear exactly how this sounds. And once again, all the circuit tracks we'll be doing in this case is providing MIDI control. So keyboard control, and then using these knobs to control set parameters. And shout out to Jackie's Fridge on the Novation Circuit Users Facebook group for beating me to this idea and providing a list of CCs that they chose to map to these knobs. I've used a modified version of that. All right, so I've got the output of the Flash synth running to my audio interface, and then I've got my headphones plugged into my audio interface as well. Once again, the only thing the circuit is doing is controlling MIDI. And that works really well. Try to push the polyphony a bit. So far it's handling whatever I throw at it. So let's change some parameters. This is the attack. This is the sustain. A bit of a lack of low end, which is fine. I'll be using this as a layer with other stuff, so I can have a different synth track on the circuit handle the bass. That's okay. This is related to the FM parameters. So yeah, this is the coarse FM ratio, and this is the fine FM ratio. And then this should be the waveform select. And this is LFO. This is a little bit finicky, but that's kind of what I expected, so that's fine. I just gotta make very fine little knob movements. Woo! You can really hear the FM elements. Now, theoretically, this should be able to change the algorithm itself, like the synth type. So you'll notice it's got a pretty specific sound no matter which... Oh, that's cool. No matter which algorithm I select. And working it with an external device like this is a little bit finicky, which is totally fine. That's kind of the limitation of this thing, it being absurdly tiny. Like, I'm not sure I necessarily recommend this for normal use. I got this out of sheer curiosity because I just think this is cool. And you'll notice a lot of the time, it's fairly cold sounding. But in my opinion, in a pleasing way. That's super subjective, but every now and again I think we could use a little bit of like cold and digital sounding stuff. Like icy cold. There's some weird stuff in here. And that's the thing that's like super impressive is how much functionality they've crammed into something so dang small, and they keep updating it too. Algorithm's not my favorite. I like something... Ooh! Tend to like something a little cleaner sounding. So you'll notice I've had some trouble getting this CC for the algorithm select to give me good results. It's a little bit temperamental. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there, and I'm going to try to pipe the audio from the flash synth back into the circuit tracks. Let's see if this works, because that was kind of the idea for me of using it with this device in particular, is that you can bring the audio of a synth that you're controlling with the circuit tracks back into the circuit tracks and like mix it. So these MIDI tracks, that's all they do is control external stuff. So it would be cool to have something this small to basically expand the sound palette of the circuit. So let me set that up and see if I can get that to work. Moment of truth. That sounds fine. So I'm just going to program in some notes real quick. Okay, let's do this. Oh, see, there's the grounding issues they were talking about. So let me just chain a few patterns together and just record something. Save that. That glitches it out a bit. By the way, this is the Force Truly Evil Pack Retrofuturism, and I'm quite enjoying it so far. Here's what I've got so far. And remember, this is the flash synth. So now that I've done all the experimentation that you've just seen, let's talk about some first impressions on this thing. Overall, I still might have trouble recommending it other than for some very specific use cases, and if you like its fairly specific sound, although I'm almost certain that I'm missing out on some major details of how this thing is capable of sounding because I haven't spent a ton of time in the software editor yet. But this is definitely cool. It definitely works, and it's, you know, a really small operation that they're running, and they are making something high quality. The big limitation is not actually the size, but the fact that it expands to work with other stuff. Like, yeah, this is tiny, but then look at the amount of cables I needed to get this to work and to record my circuit. And that's not even considering the fact that it might be good to connect this thing to an amp or something to get rid of any electrical interference. So is it practical, especially for complete portable use? Not quite. But if you want a hardware synth to work with some software or some hardware and want something tiny or just want to get it for the cool factor, it works. And I definitely see myself using this in the future. If you'd like to see some more exploration of some stuff that's really pushing the boundaries of music production tech, you can click or tap up over here. And if you'd like to see some more first impressions of music production devices, you can click or tap up over here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back with a new video in a little bit.